Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Atariwala and I am your host for this series. And today we have with us Alex Marshall, who is a firefighter with D&D, that's the Department of National Defense, and she is currently serving at the amazingly impressive fire hall that is in Esquimalt, British Columbia. And the fire hall serves Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt and all of the different structures and areas that the base encompasses. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jody.
It's great to have you here. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Alex. Where were you born and brought up? And tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised here on Vancouver Island out in Central Saanich. The fire service has kind of been in my life my whole life. My dad was with the City of Victoria Fire Department, and so kind of from a young age I was exposed to, visiting the hall and seeing the trucks, and that was always pretty exciting as a little girl. Maybe not super common to be as into it as I was as a little kid, but yeah, I thought it was awesome. And so that sort of stemmed my initial career path as wanting to be a paramedic. Mm-hmm. And so I went down that road. I did my primary care paramedic training with the Justice Institute of British Columbia. And then shortly after that, I got on with the Central Saanich Volunteer Fire Department, which ignited my career in the fire service. Essentially, I did all my training and I spent 8 years as a volunteer firefighter and got all my certifications, and that ultimately enabled me to be able to apply when CFB Esquimalt was hiring.
Nice. That's awesome. So this series talks about different people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, mm-hmm. different genders. What was it like to apply to the Department of National Defense as a firefighter, and how was that for a woman or anybody applying, really?
Yeah, it was an interesting process, to be perfectly honest. When I walked into the first element of the competition, when I applied to D&D, I was the only woman in a room full of men writing the exam. And so, which didn't ultimately faze me, having spent time with Central Saanich Fire Department. I was one of 3, I think, and so I was used to kind of being a minority in that sense.
Sure.
But it certainly is a little bit intimidating when you walk into a room like that and know that you're the only one in there, writing that same exam. So, yeah, it was a little bit humbling, but got through it, and here we are, almost 4 years later. I've been with the fire department here, and
what's that process like? Like, what does it take to not just apply, but to go through the whole process of wanting to become a firefighter for the Department of National Defense?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, like I mentioned, there was a written component, so we had a written exam. Following that, we were invited back to do a practical skills assessment. So we were actually right here at Station 1, and they had a whole bunch of different stations, like skill stations set up that you had to go through in kind of a timely manner, wearing all of our turnout gear. And then following up on that, we were invited back for an interview for the candidates that were successful after those first 2 elements of the process. Mm-hmm. Went through a panel interview with several of our management and chiefs, and then we were notified whether or not we made it into the recruitment pool. And so I was notified, I think, maybe like 6 weeks after my interview that I had successfully made it into the recruitment pool. And it was a couple of months after that I got a probably one of the most exciting phone calls of my life.
Awesome.
That was really cool.
That's awesome. And so once you get selected and you're chosen to proceed as a D&D firefighter, what is the process of training? What's all that like? How long does it take? Where do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. So after that phone call, I started a few months later, and there was myself and 6 others that I actually started with here at the same time, and we went through, I think it was about 9 or 10 weeks of training, and we were here Monday to Friday, 7 to 4, and just cycling through, meeting all the crews, because there's a different crew on every day, the way our shift pattern works. And we were from getting tours on the base with the fire inspectors, who are extremely knowledgeable, to eventually training and doing drills with the crew, getting familiar with the ships, because we also do shipboard firefighting here at the base,
Right.
being a naval base.
Yeah.
And so getting familiar with which ways up and down on the ships, because some of those ships are
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
big and confusing.
Right.
And ultimately firefighting operations on a ship is a little bit different than a structural setup.
For sure.
So that was a big element of our training as well. We did about 8 or 9 weeks, I guess, or so of Monday to Friday training, and then we were all assigned to our shifts, and then the shifts kind of took over how they do things, which sometimes can vary a little bit depending on who you're working with.
And that's kind of neat. Like, I assume that your interest in firefighting could have been with any department, not just the Department of National Defense, but the fact that you got selected here is to me very cool. I talk about, this series talks about talking to real heroes, and it doesn't get any more I don't think nobody exemplifies hero more than a firefighter who goes into fires to to save people's lives, but being a member of the Department of National Defense is a different type of firefighting. Like you said, there's ships, and with the geography that you guys have to cover, it's probably quite different from other departments.
It certainly is a little bit of a different territory for sure. D&D, or CFB Esquimalt rather, our territory sort of focuses on all the like military housing, and then as well dockyard and Naden, and then we also have like another sort of community housing area and military housing over in Colwood and Belmont Park. And there's also ships over there and vessels that moor on that side of the bay as well. So yeah, it is a little bit strange. Another element to it is addressing down in dockyard is a little bit strange. It's not like your normal, I live at 1234 Smith Street. It's
right.
Building this, and there's no civic address for it. So getting familiar with our territory has been a steep learning curve, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I've been here almost 4 years, and I'm still learning and having to remember where certain buildings are and
sure
and whatnot.
Wow. Well, that's got to be interesting in itself. So what was it like going through training? Because you mentioned, learning the area, but there's the art of firefighting as well, and so there's a lot to it. Just looking around in the truck and looking around in this fire hall, there is so much equipment and apparatus that you have to be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do a walk around of a fire truck.
Yeah, so this is our one of our engines we have here at CFB Esquimalt Fire Rescue. This truck will go to just about every call we get, medical in nature, fire related, or if, like the classic cat in the tree. So yeah, this is a pretty all-around truck. It'll also be sort of the primary pump that we use if we need a water source at a call.
Okay.
The pump on this thing is enormous and like incredibly powerful. So yeah, we can take a little spin around and check it out.
Let's do it.
We've got bumper line on the front here, which would be deployed right away if we had like a car fire kind of thing, just because it's a shorter line.
Okay.
And there's a foam capability out of this line, which is pretty awesome. Keep coming around here. We've got our, obviously, driver's seat, very important. And this is our pump panel. So This is where typically the driver of the truck would be responsible for operating the unit, and so this is where we kind of take charge and control the water source, and make sure everybody on the other end of the hose line has what they need to fight the fire.
It's a lot more complex than one might otherwise think, or it looks more complex.
Yeah. Yes, there's lots of buttons and knobs here, but with the right training, it makes it very possible. There's a little math involved, which sometimes is a little bit stressful, but the truck carries, I believe these carry about 500 gallons, which gets you through 5-6 minutes of firefighting if you're using hose lines, and I think about 3 minutes if you're using our big monitor off the top. So can deplete really quickly, so it's important to get a water source established, such as a hydrant or static or dynamic water source, depending where you are.
Right.
But yeah, this is our pump panel.
Cool.
Back through here, we've got all of our cabinets, which are full of tools. This one specifically is full of nozzles and fittings to make your setup happen when you're trying to establish your water source.
Okay.
In here, I think we have a bunch of tools. We've got all kinds of forcible entry, bolt cutters, all kinds of things. Traffic cones for when we're on scene stuck on a road. We've got fans in here. We've got our power tools if we have to get through gates or roofs, for ventilation and stuff.
Wow.
So lots of stinky stuff in there, but part of the way it goes. Back here we've got this is called our hydrant bag. So whoever's tasked in the back seat to jump out and actually take the hydrant and establish that water connection grabs this bag and then comes up here, and we get into our high vol. So this is our supply line. It's a 4-inch hose that they also grab, and they'll wrap it around the hydrant and get that water source established as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Come around here. We've got, I think, a couple of pumps in here, as well as some. We've got some extension cords, lighting, and then these are our apartment packs. So, going aboard the smaller MCDV vessels on the base here, we take these on and can add or reduce our lines depending on what we need. And also, if we're working with a multi-story building, we'll use these to reach, where we have to get to if we're heading up to the 4th, 5th, 6th story, depending what we need.
Sure.
Not a lot of that on the base, but there's a few accommodations buildings that certainly require a little bit of extra line. Here we've got our ground monitor. So this is like a high volume water device that we anchor on the ground, and that can put out a lot of water a minute. Don't ask me the details on gallonage per minute, but it's significant.
Awesome.
Then we've got some spare bottles here for our SCBA packs we wear when we're on scene. Here, this is our first aid cabinets. We've got all of our medical response here. We've got our AED and our trauma bag, our O2 kit, so oxygen related in here. Got some spare water and equipment up there, and then this is our this is actually our RIT pack, which is stands for Rapid Intervention Team. So when we're on scene at a fire, there'll be a minimum of 2 members, and typically an officer as well, designated to setting up a little bit away from like the main operations, and we're tasked with assessing the structure, looking for any additional hazards, setting up a second means of egress for the crews, because if any of our members go down, it's then our responsibility to deploy a rescue crew, and we're ultimately the ones that have to help our members get out of a sticky situation.
Right.
So this is a super important and integral piece of gear that is important that we, like, there's benchmarks for getting this set up in a timely manner when we get on scene. So this is super important cabin to be very familiar with. We've got our RIT irons in here, which are great for forcible entry and accessing hard to reach spots. We've got our thermal imaging camera, which is part of this kit. So this will tell us, if we're sitting in front of a heat wall, or if there's even a body in the other side of a wall or a door. So really great tools. And then in here we just have some more generic RIT gear that comes along with the territory.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then here we have all of our seating.
Right.
So where our crew gets stationed throughout the day. Each seat in the truck actually has like a different task. The either end seat will be responsible for taking the hydrant. Another usually winds up on our attack team, and so everybody has roles based on the seat you sit in.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That's pretty much a 360 of our frontline engine.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Yeah, of course.
That's great.
The biggest thing I've learned, I think, in spending as much time as I have in the fire service is when you don't know what you're doing or you need help with something, is don't hesitate to ask for help. There's always somebody willing to give you a hand, and this is not the occupation where you can just wing it. We train, and we train hard for a reason, is because we wind up out helping the public. We help Canadian military members on some of their worst days, and so it's important for us to really understand and have a solid foundation of training on all of our equipment. So we take pride in the fact that we spend a lot of time training and looking after our equipment and making sure we understand it, because when it comes down to it and the adrenaline's running high and emotions are running high, because these are like super serious events sometimes, it's important we know exactly what we're doing and how to use the equipment that we have to help, whether it's the public or military members.
Right. Yeah. So tell me what a typical day is like for a D&D firefighter. Yeah. What does your day consist of?
For sure. So we run on a little bit of a different shift pattern than most like municipal departments. We run a 24-hour shift, which is something that I've grown to love. So our shift starts just before 8 a.m. and we get going. We do our lineup. We get assigned to our trucks and duties for the day, and then we go through all of our equipment, make sure it's all working order, everything's up to snuff sort of, and just fine tune everything for the day. And then we get busy cleaning the hall, doing our morning rounds, and then we of course have to have breakfast. Firefighters and their breakfast is a big one.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we take a break for breakfast, and then we usually spend a little time working on ourselves and taking care of physical exercise. Obviously, firefighting is an extremely physically demanding job, and also there's a big element of mental health with physical exercise, as we're starting to learn through all this like stress relief and PTSD and stuff, and what a massive element being able to exercise on the job it provides for us. So yeah, we take care of ourselves, a little bit of exercise, and then move through lunch, and then in the afternoons we do our training. So that can consist of anything from, we have a training site down in Esquimalt where we can do our structural drills, or we'll head on down to the jetties in the dockyard and do a ship's drill. And take time looking at how we deploy our hoses and how we run our training on the ships.
That's awesome. And what is the environment like in terms of your colleagues? And you mentioned that there aren't a ton of women in the fire department, but you're not the only one. So what's that like? What's it like being in a traditionally male-dominated field?
Yeah, of course. You know what, my experience here, and ultimately my entire experience in the fire service, has been very positive. As a woman in the fire service, which, like you said, has traditionally been a male-dominated environment. So now I'm one of 3 women here at CFB Esquimalt Fire Rescue. Myself and Joe and Lisa is our newest recruit, currently going through her recruit training. And honestly, I really can't say enough good things. My crew was incredibly welcoming when I started, and understood from the get-go that I was here to do my job and not not
fill a quota.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that the expectation was not for them to be gentlemanly around me. I'm one of the crew, I'm one of them. So
yeah.
Once we established that, it was like smooth sailing from there on out. I've had incredible support from all my officers on my shift, up to and including our fire chief Douglas. He's been incredible supporter of me coming onto the department, and I'm really grateful, because I know my crew supporting me comes, they see management supporting, diverse hires, and that's really important. It's a top down trickle effect that affects everybody, and so ultimately my experience has been very positive.
Yeah, I think it's that's wonderful to hear, and because any organization, especially these days, hopefully reflects the communities that we live in, and um, there's no community that is just one particular type of ethnicity or background or gender. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And I know working for like the Canadian Forces is big on, diverse workplaces, and I'm proud, honestly, to be a firefighter here with DND.
that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. Um, Tell me about some of the more interesting things that you've done during your time here. Uh, I actually saw you on television.
Right.
The first time I actually knew that Alex Marshall existed, I saw you on television. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was a fun little evening with Jeff King and Ed Bain. They do little segments on neat places in the community, and so the Upside clip there came here for the evening, and yeah, I got to talk with Jeff King, which was a great experience. Jeff and I actually, so back in 2019, I participated in the Tour de Rock,
Excellent.
which is a ride. We cycled the island, the whole length of Vancouver Island, in raising awareness and funds for pediatric cancer,
Right.
which was an incredible experience. And so it was a team of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics that got together and did this ride. We trained for about 6 months, and then did I think it was about 1,200-kilometer ride, like
Yeah.
give or take.
Sure.
And it was an incredible experience. That was, though it's not exactly related to firefighting, it has probably been one of the coolest experiences of my life, and I'm extremely honored and grateful to have been able to represent CFB Esquimalt Fire Rescue in that experience.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen the Tour de Rock, and that's got to be such an emotional experience.
It sure
Seeing
was.
all of the children that not only are coming out to help in that cause, but
Mm-hmm.
but the kids that are afflicted with cancer.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I think I would love for the viewers to get a sense of what you experienced during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. An emotional roller coaster, to say the least. But it was extremely humbling to see, not only the kids who've battled cancer, but the families that went through it as well, and the siblings of children who had to fight the fight. And when we're riding, or when we're on the team, you get paired up with families who've got either siblings of kids who had pediatric cancer, or have had it themselves, and you get paired up, and they're your junior riders. And so you're kind of, the idea, I think, is to sort of get to know them a little bit, and whether you mentor them or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the relationship looks like. And I'm super actually proud and glad that I've maintained contact with my junior rider. He's up in Port Alberni, super cool kid, and we've maintained contact over the last, I guess, 3 years now, and it's been neat seeing him sort of grow. And I mean, he actually battled cancer when he was just like a little guy. He was like 3 years old, I think, when he was first diagnosed, and he's such a awesome young man, and I'm super fired up to be part of his life, and just keeping tabs, keeping him in line.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about a profession like this,
Mm-hmm.
is that I guess people look to folks like firefighters as role models, and whether it's a young child who's battling cancer or anybody else, there's that kind of awe. You mentioned about coming and seeing the fire trucks when you were young, and I remember I would do the same thing. They're cool to see, and it's such a neat kind of a thing. So I think anytime that people are able to get a sense of what firefighters do and how they help the community, I think that's a wonderful thing. And you being able to participate in something like Tour de Rock is awesome, because it's volunteer. Nobody's telling you to do it. Right?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah. And it's a big time commitment, I would imagine.
It is, yeah. We were riding 3 days a week. So we do 2 shorter training sessions during the week, and then on Sundays we'd try and pile on some kilometers just to get used to sitting in the seat for hours on end.
Right.
And then coupled with that was the fundraising aspect. So that was kind of like a whole other job. It was a part-time job for me essentially.
Right.
Kind of getting my head wrapped around that and how to kind of make it fun for the public to get involved, and then and just organize all of that on top of my duties here and my life outside of work and Tour de Rock. But very worthwhile cause, and very grateful I was able to participate.
Good for you. Good for you. Tell me, we've talked about a lot of the positives. With every job there's ups and downs. How would you describe that in the fire service?
Yeah, I mean, I am grateful to have been able to find an occupation that I am so passionate about, but there's also a huge emotional toll that comes with it. Because I love I love running into burning buildings, and I love helping people, but you're also theoretically helping these people on the worst day of their lives. And sometimes, it's not, we don't always have great outcomes. We don't always have the happy endings that you want to see. And so that takes its toll. But you know what? Something I've learned here is that the sense of camaraderie and the team, like, we really do come together and mesh well as a shift, and kind of can help each other get through stuff if we're having, whether it's from an event, whether it's from an incident at work here, or if something's going on outside of work. I feel pretty comfortable speaking to everybody on shift here when there's stuff going on, and likewise, or vice versa. I'm happy to lend a set of ears when needed, and that has really made working in the fire service, being a first responder, possible. Is the sense of like community and the brotherhood or sisterhood of being part of the fire service.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. So you shared a little bit of good news with me earlier.
Yes.
You are pregnant.
I am.
That's,
nearly 5 months.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So tell me how that has been in terms of like for work. How is this organization kind of treating the fact that you're pregnant, and that I guess some of your work is going to have to change a little bit because of that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. As I grow, they've been incredibly supportive. From day one, they just it was like, what do you need from us, and how can we make this work? Which is, a pretty awesome feeling, and I feel like I have a genuine understanding of like a healthy and supportive work environment, which is great. So yeah, I've actually transitioned full-time into our dispatch center here at the fire hall, which makes it possible for me to continue coming to work, hopefully up until the day that this baby's due. So it's pretty incredible that there's like a duty to accommodate, and there's a position for me that's not just sitting in an office. I'm still part of the crew, I'm still on shift, which has been great, I think, overall for my like mental health, and being able to still be part of the team and on the job.
Right on. And once the baby arrives, what's going to happen with your maternity leave?
Yeah. So I will be taking off for about a year. Is my choice of maternity leave. I think there's an 18-month option as well, but ultimately I love my job, and I think after a year I'll be ready to come back. I'm very excited to be a mother, and make no mistake. But yeah, I think I'll be taking off for a year and spending time with my family and raising a child, which is a whole new adventure. So being employed by the federal government is pretty great spot to be when you're starting a family. Pretty well supported in that area. So yeah, I'll be gone for a year, but I hope to be back before too long and back on shift with everybody.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for you. So what is your ultimate aspirations in the fire hall? Because there's different avenues that you can take in this organization. So I'm sure you've given some thought to that.
Yeah, for sure. I love working on the floor, and when I say working on the floor, I mean being on shift with the guys here. You know, taking courses to go the officer route is certainly something that interests me. I know starting a family is going to put me behind a little bit, but that's just part of life, and I'm all right with that. I'm sure there'll be many lessons learned in my time away on mat leave that are applicable here to the fire hall and whatnot. Right. Yeah, so I think taking the officer route and working my way up through the ranks is something that does interest me right now. In terms of being a chief, I don't know if I want that kind of responsibility just yet. And it also takes you off of shift work. You're kind of back in a Monday to Friday sort of setting.
Right.
And I'm not ready to give that up.
Right.
Yeah. And much too young and junior to be worrying about that anyway.
Sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but working for the federal government means that you also have some flexibility as to where you could work if you chose, like if life happened such that you needed to move or that you wanted to move. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's being in an organization like this is advantageous.
Absolutely. So the beautiful thing about working at CFB Esquimalt Fire Rescue is we are technically civilians. We're not actually CAF members.
Okay.
And so which means we're tied to the base. We cannot be deployed elsewhere in the country. However, there are other Canadian Forces Base fire halls across the country, all the way over to Halifax, which is the other sister naval base. So yeah, we can actually, if it came down to it, applying for a transfer is an option, a possibility. I know there have been previous members from not only CFB Esquimalt but other members across the country that have moved departments and kind of been received with open arms, as far as I've heard. I don't know any of them personally, but
sure,
it is a pretty awesome opportunity should it be required. So it's certainly not something it's not something I'm actively considering, but right. I like it here in Victoria quite a bit. But yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So for those that are interested in firefighting as a career, regardless of where, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up, my parents had me in just about every team sport you can possibly register a kid for. And I think that is a super important element to whether you're a kid or an adult wanting to get into the fire service. Having an understanding of what it means to be part of a team is integral to being a good candidate for a fire department, for any fire department, because ultimately you're relying on your teammates if you get into any sort of situation. and you need them. This firefighting is not a one-man operation. It's a multi-man operation, and it's important to have a cohesive functioning team in order to get through our day-to-day. So absolutely, team sports was super, super important, and not being afraid to reach out, stop by your local fire hall, ask a few questions. We're always happy to talk.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's a great place to leave this chat, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jody.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. I wish you all the best for your future, for your family. And I hope that this gives a little bit of inspiration to those that are interested in firefighting. Doesn't matter where it is, but I think if you're serving your community, what a great vocation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.